G'day, Tragic here, and I'm going to finally do something that I've been asked to do quite a lot, and that is a deck construction video. The reason I was waiting off on this is because I wanted to have the whole of the Mirkwood cycle out before I did any deck constructions, and this is going to be using Core plus the Mirkwood cycle player cards. And I'm going to do a couple of these, and this first one is a 3-player deck, and then I'm going to do a 2-player deck, and then I'm going to do a 1-player deck. So we basically got 3 decks here. Okay, so the first thing we'll do is we'll just check out the heroes. Okay, so I might just make them a little larger, since we're just looking at the heroes by themselves. And the next deck, and the next deck. Okay, so these are the hero combinations. Now, they might seem a little bit strange, so we'll just go through them. And the way that we like to make our decks in my particular group is you pick your heroes first, okay? And once you, because basically this game, I mean, people like to talk about the card combinations, but it's really a hero-based game. It strongly relies on heroes and modifications to the heroes through attachments and other abilities. So the core of your deck should be built around your heroes. So you want to select your heroes, and you want to make sure your heroes synergize. One of the big problems people have with making decks in multiplayer in this game is that they do it like a single player. They do it like a dual game. They make one deck and they make another deck. But you are actually, even though this is 3 decks, we are actually making one single deck that 3 people use. And that's the big difference. You do not have to have every single card in the game, except for allies, do not have to be in the decks that they're designed to be cast on. Like, for example, if you're designing Citadel Plate to be cast on Gimli, right? Citadel Plate does not have to be in Gimli's deck. It can be in this deck. In fact, it would probably be, it can be in this deck. It'd probably be better in this deck because it's got 2 icons, so it can be cast faster. And that's one of the big things that people forget about this game, is that you are really playing it together. So you've got to design the deck as if it's one deck. Now, let's just have a quick look at the heroes and see how it works. Firstly, we have Thalen, and we have Gimli, and we have Dane. And these guys all combo together, okay? So what this means is that Thalen over here, he has a questing ability that is extremely powerful, puts a damage on all the things. And the reason he's in this deck is because of cards like bats and crows. Okay, so I just got these so you can see them. So basically, cards like this, Thalen completely owns these cards, because these are actually quite dangerous cards. And basically, not only does this beat Surge, it also kills the card instantly. Okay, and there's a lot of 2-drop card, 2 health cards, and they combo with, you know, the Spearmen and stuff like that. So Thalen was always a really, really, really good hero in my opinion, and he has just gotten immeasurably better over time, because now he's like ridiculously good in Khazad-dûm. So that's why Thalen's in here, and Thalen's ability only happens when he quests. But when he's got with Dine, he is now questing for 2. So we have a nice 2 quests plus a nice effect when we quest. Okay. And of course, Dine also buffs Gimli with an extra attack bonus, which isn't that necessary. Gimli is a character which I'm a little iffy. I think he's expensive for his effects, and I often think that he becomes overpowered you get to the point where he can kill anything, and that's good, obviously. But he's killing everything with like 10, 6, 7 damage to spare. So he's sort of overcompensates. You don't need his power. He's obviously a good card. He's very easy to buff, that kind of stuff. But I'm starting to think, with all the dwarfs that came out in Kaz, there are some better options. But don't have these cards, and he's really, really good in this deck. Okay, so Dane's ability doesn't really affect him, because Gimli should be buffed beyond the point of caring about that 1 extra damage. Okay, so that's the dwarfs. They're pretty self-explanatory. Now, let's have a look at... this guy is also a quester. And Bilbo. Oh, we'll talk about Bilbo in a sec. Now, Theodred is a very, very good card for multiplayer, because he allows you to, do your mana fixing very easily. Now, there are some things to keep in note with this. It's a bit like Aragorn's ability. His is a response, right, that occurs after Theodred commits to a quest, okay? And what that means is that turn order counts. Okay? So if this player, right, is player 1, okay, he's committing to the quest first. And no one else has committed, okay? Which means that he can only place it on himself or someone else in his own team that commits, okay? If he's second player, only the third player can take a resource, and if he's a third player, anyone can take a resource. So that's something to keep in mind, but it's still a very powerful effect, right? So that's the other thing. Boonk. So there's other questers. Now, we also have Frodo for questing, and we have Bilbo Baggins for questing, and that gives us a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plus 1, 6. That gives us a starting quest power of 6, which isn't that strong. This actual deck setup is a little slow off the bat, but as I said, we were undefeated for the whole Mirkwood cycle pretty easily. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the other heroes. We have Bilbo, and Bilbo is basically the game's best wall. There is not a character in the game that is as good at defense as Bilbo. If you have a well set up Bilbo, he can actually by himself defend the entire game. He has his responsibility, which allows him to convert damage into threat, and it's very important to remember that you can only do that once per round. Okay, people often forget that. And you can fast hitch him, you can put all this stuff on him. I mean, he is an extremely powerful defensive card, and he's got two will at the beginning of the game when you need that extra will. So he's extremely good card. He pretty much makes it in all my decks. And we have Bilbo, the other hobbit, and to me he is a no-brainer. I mean, card draw is so important in card games, and Bilbo is just an extremely, extremely powerful card. That 2 extra cards a turn makes a huge difference. Basically, if you're not running Bilbo in your deck, just as a test, swap Bilbo in and see how much more flow you get out of your deck, because you're just pulling better cards quicker, and you can't go wrong with that. Now, the other cards we have here are pretty self-explanatory. Oh, except for one. There's one more combo thing going on here. We have Eleanor. Now, Eleanor is a sort of mixed blessing, but a lot of people don't like Eleanor. I actually think she's pretty powerful, but there are she's a little tricky to use that do make her less powerful than I originally thought, and we could actually possibly take her out, but I still think that she has great use and if used effectively. Now, basically, what the problem is that she can cancel. Where is it? She can cancel the when revealed effect, right? Only of a treachery card. Okay? And then you have to discard that card and replace it. Okay, so it's immeasurably worse than Test of Will, which allows you to just cancel any when revealed effect and you do not have to replace the card. Now, the other thing is that there aren't action windows inside the reveal step. Okay? Now, what that means is, when you are questing, okay, you start the quest and then you reveal 3 cards off. Well, in this case, we're playing 3-player. You reveal 3 cards off the encounter deck. Now, there are no action windows between the individual cards being revealed, right? Only at the end. You have an action window at the end before the calculations are done. That is why her card here says response. Okay, because response is different to action window. All very well and good. She uses it as you would expect. But a lot of people they thought they could. Well, I did anyway. They thought you could load her up with, say, unexpected courage, and then untap her and then cancel a second treachery in the same reveal step. And you can't do that. There is no action window to untap. And there, as far as I know, off the top of my head, there are no untap effects at response speed, which means that you can only use her ability once every reveal step. Okay, so she's even worse than a lot of people thought. But I still think the treachery cards are the kind of cards that will absolutely wreck you. Okay, you can lose an entire game on a single treachery card, and I like playing a more cautious game, and if you have Eleanor, unless you draw 2 of these terrible treachery cards in a row, you can pretty much guarantee that you will never lose the game to a treachery. You will always be able to cancel. And that requires piloting skill, what they call, like, controlling a deck people call piloting. And it takes piloting skill to use Eleanor, because you have to resist using her. You only want to use her when you have to, because you want her to be available for the entire reveal step. Okay? So she is a tricky card to use, and some people like to side her out, and I could see people siding her out, but I think if you have her in, you're protected. You will never lose the game to a treachery if you're using Eleanor correctly. It basically makes treacheries almost irrelevant. Well, not really, but a lot less relevant. You're not going to get, like, Ferocious Bite or whatever from Golem and get, like, 8 threat and lose the game in a single turn or whatever. Or, yeah, anyway, so that's Eleanor. And finally, we have another one of my favorite combos for multiplayer, Brand and Eleanor. Now, Brand is a fantastic card. So, hang on for a sec. Let's just compare him to Legolas, which is the favorite. Brand is 1 more threat, but he has 2 will, and he has 3 attack and 2 defense, while Legolas has 1 will, 3 attack and 1 defense. So, in my opinion, he has a better base ability. Now, Legolas has a very, very powerful effect where you can place progress tokens, and you can actually build attack decks that are completely around this idea of not questing but just placing. But they have a great weakness, and that is if you're not pulling enemies, then you cannot quest. And that's a huge problem. And also, there are the Blades of Gondolin. Now, these Blades of Gondolin, they cost 1, and they give you a similar effect. Now, obviously, yes, you need to draw them. They take up a deck slot. There are downsides to them. They're actually extremely good in the Khazad-dûm and later because everything is an orc. Remember, orcs and goblins are actually the same thing in this game, and in Lord of the Rings, for that matter. But what I'm saying is you can replicate this effect that Legolas has quite easily. They're only a cost of 1, very easy cards to cast. So I really think that his ability is a little bit overrated. Okay? 1, it's conditional on you drawing creatures, and 2, you are able to get a very similar effect quite easily through the Blade of Gondolin. I'm not saying he's a bad card, I just prefer Brand. And the reason why I preferred Brand is that he has this amazing combo with Beravor. And what that means is he can attack and he can untap Beravor, who can then tap and draw cards. So what this means is that basically without needing attachments, without needing anything, you automatically on the turn 1, assuming you draw a monster when you do the reveal step, and remember we're playing 3 players, so that's very likely. Turn 1, we have an extra card, an extra 2 cards, and an extra 2 cards. So we have 5 cards, 5 extra cards being drawn on turn 1 without a single requirement except a monster, which is pretty common. Okay, no card draw requirements. And that is that is ridiculously powerful, and it works again in 2-player, and I just think it's one of the most powerful effects you can get in the 2-player game at the moment for heroes. Ridiculously powerful. Brand and Beravor is just an amazing combo. And it requires, again, a little bit of piloting. And let's just have another look at our decks. Basically, the decks are split into 3 types. Vaguely 3 types, okay? We have what we call the attack dog. And that's this deck here, okay? Now, this deck is designed solely to take monsters. We have Frodo for, like, kick-ass defense, to defend against things. And then we have Gimli to pound stuff into dust. Okay? So that's what this deck is designed to do, and that when you see the cards, that's what the cards are designed to. It's full of things like feint, and cards that are designed to just make it easier to kill monsters. And meanwhile, Beravor is just here just to tap. Just to tap and give people cards. And then this deck is basically a support deck. So this deck is full of ranged creatures and eagles and stuff like that. And this deck is designed to attack and assist this deck. And so the effect, so this is designed to assist this deck, assisting Gimli, and then untapping Beravor. Okay, so you basically want all the monsters to be going to this deck here, and you want this deck to be assisting. Okay. Meanwhile, this deck over here is responsible mainly for questing and also in assisting. Okay, so these 2 decks have very similar functions. They're designed to support and quest, and this deck is designed to do all the attacking, but this deck here also has quite a lot of defense. Okay, and that's pretty much how the decks are constructed. So that's how our heroes work. We have a synergy here. We have synergy going on here. We have Frodo, which is just a crazy card. We have 2 sets of, card draw. Plus, we have questers, and both these questers have... Oh, well, that doesn't make any sense, all those lines, does it? Okay, so we've got synergy with the dwarfs, obviously. We've got the questing synergy between... Theodred and Thalen both have effects while questing, so every time they quest, they're doing something. Frodo has his things. We have the card draw with Bilbo and Beravor, and we've got Eleanor as the backup to save if there's any kind of evil treachery card. So that is the basic setup for these decks. Now I'll go through the actual decks in the next file. Okay.